everybody, welcome back to the Commute with So Is Your Podcast. The biggest geek news this week seems to be that Benioff and Weiss from Game of Thrones infamy at this point, is it still fame, are no longer doing a Star Wars trilogy. And I guess the Game of Thrones prequel series that they pitched also got axed. I'm told those two things are independent of each other, but it seems awfully convenient. Everyone was assuming it's solely because the last season of Game of Thrones sucked. That is a completely objective statement, it's just a fact. So I decided to look a little bit deeper, because everyone knew that last season sucked for a while, but it still brought in a ton of viewers, it still made its money, and it still won awards, bizarrely enough. So then I found a video that these two guys decided to make at, I believe it was the Austin Film Festival, over the weekend, completely unprovoked. They just made this decision, and I have no idea why, where they basically went through a confession of taking themselves down and making themselves completely unmarketable, except for to Netflix, who they already signed a 9-figure deal with, where they admitted that they screwed up the pilot of Game of Thrones, and then HBO gave them more money and said, make a longer, better pilot. And they had no idea how costuming worked, and they didn't really care about getting into the characters, even though Game of Thrones is all about character. They admitted that the actors were the ones who did anything to make those characters fleshed out. So anything you liked about any of those characters, you could solely thank the actors who actually cared about George R.R. Martin's vision and his words. Benioff and Weiss admitted that they never read the Game of Thrones books. They didn't care enough to. They just saw this thing as marketable, and they marketed it, and somehow HBO just let them keep failing upwards. They really didn't have anything to do with any of the show's success, and they even called working on this show one of, if not the largest shows of all time, their film school. After these completely unprovoked confessions is when they were given the axe from the Star Wars universe. The politically correct, I don't think that's the right word, the diplomatic excuse the public was given was that they're just too busy with their Netflix deal. So someone offers you 9 figures for an overall deal to produce shows for Netflix. Awesome. Anyone who has any idea for shows would take that. At the same time, Disney and LucasArts comes to you with one of the most famous franchises of all time and offers you another dump truck full of money to tell your own Star Wars trilogy. You're not locked in anyone else's script, you're not locked in anyone else's ideas. They had a lot of say into what they were going to tackle. Something else that anyone with any inclination for storytelling who likes popular franchises would want to do. I don't think too busy exists when you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars and the ability to play in a sandbox that anyone would literally kill to play in. I just don't buy that. Clearly, it was their strange admissions that got them kicked out of their projects and kicked off the Star Wars franchise. I don't know if the same can be said for the Game of Thrones prequel series, but the same day HBO axed one, they also greenlit another one to a full season, so it might have just been, hey, we had dueling pilots, this one was better, the Targaryens are the bigger draw, this one has dragons, whatever it is, we are still getting more Game of Thrones, just without these clowns involved. We're also still getting more Star Wars, just without these clowns involved. So it's kind of a win-win, and since they still have a 9-figure deal with Netflix, it's also a win for them. I just kind of wanted to shine some more light onto what exactly was happening with these guys. And there's kind of a side lesson that I think everyone, including the studios, can take away from this. Stop announcing things 10 years in advance. Stop trying to be the first one to get onto Twitter to say what's coming out. If you have a Star Wars trilogy coming out in 2025, announce it in 2023. What's coming out in 2020, 2021? Focus on that. You have The Rise of Skywalker. You don't really need to be talking about the Weiss and Benioff trilogy coming out at some point. Caveat on the caveat. Apparently their trilogy was going to be about the origins of the Jedi Order, which I think would still be really awesome to explore. I hope they find someone with more capable and honestly more deserving hands. Someone who's going to care and follow through to the end. Well, thanks for taking this ride with me. Be sure to check out SoWizardPodcast.com every week for reviews, recommendations, merchandise, and more. Be sure to listen to So Wizard Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, helps our grow our audience. We slowed down a little bit after New York Comic Con, but we're gaining steam with more things coming. We love hearing feedback, so drop us a line in the comments or find us on social media. All of our accounts will be found after the show. So Wizard Podcast also has a Patreon page. You can get bonus content, and the tiers are very, very cheap. Just a little bit goes a long way in helping support the show and helping the So Wizard crew get to conventions and producing better content for you. Thanks.